Hi YouTube, welcome to my channel. So I'm Ava Lamore Raw. That is my moniker, I guess. And I'm going to be reviewing Young, Famous, and African. So just to kind of set the stage, I've already finished. I just watched and finished season 3 in like a couple days. And then I had watched bits and pieces of season 2 because like I was interested in it, but something like after watching season 3, I had so many thoughts, and something made me say, you know what? I'm gonna watch it from season 1 because I don't believe I watched season 1. Maybe I might have started it, but I just watched it like the first episode I think for the first time because I don't remember any of this. And so anyways, I decided that like I am going to review these episodes because I have so many thoughts. Now, I will say this. I watched season 3, so that is informing some of my opinions, but not all of them. And I don't want to belabor the point. Like I kind of just want to get into the review, but I just wanted to set the stage for what we're going to be doing here. So I am going to be watching Young, Famous, and African and reviewing the episodes, and hopefully we can have a respectful discourse in the comments and trade thoughts. And yeah. So, all right. So season 1, episode 1 of Young, Famous, and African. For the record, I'm Nigerian. So I was already kind of like, and I'm already into like the Housewives, like reality shows universe, especially like the Housewives. So I was definitely interested in watching YFA. And we start out this episode, I have notes, so if you see me looking over to the left, it's because I took notes. So we start out this episode with Khanyi Mbau, and I hope I said her name correctly because I want to make sure that I say everybody's names correctly. But anyway, so in the intro scene, the beginning of the episode, we have Khanyi. She kind of sets the scene as the narrator, which is interesting. Narrator? I don't know. Narrator. She's narrating. And yeah, so now if you watch Housewives or you watch any kind of shows like this, the person who is narrating is like, they already give you star vibes. So I'm already like, all right, Khanyi is someone to watch. Like, she's obviously like the big fish in this show. So that's my impression of her. And so in terms of like these opening like credits and like the opening scene, it's really just giving like opulence, rich, luxury. And, you know, there was some talk of like, well, I'm pretty sure Khanyi said that we are just as first world as any other place in the country, even though they try to paint us as third world. And so I think that is just like, so this show to me seems to be set up as like a way to kind of dispel this idea about Africa as like a third world place and continent overall, you know? So I do like that. So anyways, because they are trying to dispel that, I guess that's why it's like very over the top, because Khanyi, you know, we get introduced to Khanyi and her partner Kudzi, and in the opening scene introduction of them, she wakes up to a piano player. That was interesting. That was definitely very rich, very luxury, very over the top. So I was just like, all right. So they do their little description of, so we get introduced to Khanyi as a like, you know, personality, and she is described as a gold digger because she had a baby with a man who was 31 years older than her, and then that didn't work out, and so now she describes herself as a cougar because she's 35 years old, and her partner Kudzi is 28, and he's also apparently a thief. I don't know if I read that right. Like, I don't know if that was because she was talking about like how she doesn't really know, or there's like speculation about how he got his money, whether or not it was stolen, and apparently the father of her child, there's speculation about how he got his money. And as far as like Kanye is concerned, she's just into the bad boys and she don't care. So that was interesting. So right off the bat, I'm like, Kanye is a wild card, but I'm still like forming my impressions and stuff. And so now next we are introduced to Annie and Swanky. Okay, so Annie and Swanky, they are in the back of a vehicle of some sort, and we get introduced to them as like frick and frack, basically. That's how Annie pretty much described their relationship, that Swanky is her best friend, he's her stylist. They're even kind of color coordinated, like in their outfits, like in their intro outfits and stuff. And so we first go into the profile of Annie, and Annie is telling us about, how she's an actress. She's acted in like over 200 movies. She's just done a lot of stuff in her career as an actress. But it's just interesting because there seems to be a little resentment because she's also married to Two-Face Idibia. I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong. Like, y'all don't crucify me. And so Two-Face is her everything. She said her first kiss, her first love. So I'm assuming her first everything, which is interesting. And so she's just describing how, she's working to expand her empire after being a mom and a wife for so long. Well, just like devoting herself to those things. And like, I can definitely see like where her storyline is coming into play. So she is going to be just kind of like showing how she is, starting to put herself first and the things she wants to do again. So I like Annie, like from the first introduction. Next, we're introduced to Nadia. Okay, so Nadia, she pulls up in a Mercedes-Benz GLE. Super cute. She looks, I loved her outfit, loved her hair. She looks like, just like a baddie. And she pulls up to so Kanye is throwing a ball. And so for me, like Kanye is giving socialite. So she's throwing a ball at like this like big event place, and Nadia has pulled up to come and see like how the event is coming along. And I did appreciate, because Nadia made a comment about the venue selection and about how it's kind of like a reminder of the colonizers who took their land. So just for like setting the stage in terms of like where they are situated in Africa, they're in South Africa. And so, there's a lot of like race relations that I don't know fully about, but behind like the history of South Africa. So, that was kind of interesting. But anyways, Nadia is a South African rapper with heritage from Zimbabwe. So they do a little montage of her music videos, and she's super cute. She's giving like Lady Gaga with like because she's got like the colorful hair and the colorful outfits and like kind of retro and like futuristic, but then also like Nicki Minaj because she's like a black female rapper. So, but she's also like unique. I loved it. I liked seeing her music because I don't know about Nadia, so it definitely made me like go, oh, okay, this is cute. I like this. She's a vibe. So she's talking more about herself, and she's dating. She's dating Vic Mensa, and apparently she's giving him bums, which I thought was hilarious because I'm just going to assume that means that she's sleeping with him. And so because she was having a conversation with Kanye, like, once they had they had seen the venue and Kanye had shown her around, they sat down, they take some shots of Jaeger, like Jaeger bombs. And, that's when Kanye is asking her about, like, her dating life, what's going on, what is she doing? And that's when Nadia reveals that she's dating Vic Mensa, who is of Ghanaian heritage. And so she just is describing like how apparently, I think he slid into her DMs, but either way, they got connected and they're in this long distance relationship. And, you know, there's some pictures of them online that show during this explanation, and it's cute. But then all of a sudden, Khanyi is like, well, I invited Diamond for you. And apparently Diamond is Zari's baby daddy, and he is also maybe married. So, I mean, that whole thing right there was just like, okay. So we haven't been introduced to Diamond yet. We've only been introduced to Khanyi, Nadia, Annie, and Swanky. So we are being introduced to Diamond by way of Khanyi in this conversation. And we're finding out that he might possibly be married. He is linked to this woman named Zari, and he has children with her. And now Kanye's invited him. So like immediately I'm just like, okay, like my mess radar was going off. I was like, all right, this is about to be some mess, this right here. But okay. So yeah, anyways, Khanyi is basically saying, like telling Nadia how she wants to introduce Diamond to Nadia because she thought they would vibe, even though Nadia just told Khanyi that she has a boyfriend. So that was a little just like, Khanyi, now why did you hear I have a boyfriend? Granted, it's a long distance relationship, but that means you can hook me up. That was interesting, but I was okay. So that immediately segues into us being introduced to Diamond Platnumz. Okay. All right. So Diamond is from Tanzania. He's a huge superstar. And we are kind of like being introduced to him and his stardom. So it's doing like a montage of like, you know, his shows and like huge stadiums, huge arenas that are filled like when he's performing. And we find out that he has 13 million followers. He has 2 kids with Zari. So we're being introduced to Zari now, again for the second time now by way of Diamond. And it looks like they're kind of flashing like blog headlines like during this like explanation of like who, this introduction of like who Diamond is. And so it turns out that apparently he cheated on her. They were together for 4 years, but they're co-parenting and he's currently single. And so anytime, you know, cheating is mentioned, there's always a little side eye, but and then he has 4 kids, but then he says maybe 5 or 6. So that, I think that was right, because I put side eye. I think that was a side eye, because what do you mean you maybe have 5 or 6 kids? Like, it just sounds like you are spreading it low and wide. Like, what do you mean? But the next scene... Okay, sorry. Somebody was calling me. I probably need to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. So the next scene, we go back to Swanky and Annie. So now they're inside their hotel room. Oh, okay, all right. So I forgot to say, Annie and Swanky are from Nigeria. So they have flown in from Nigeria to South Africa. So now they're going to their hotel. So they're in their hotel. So Annie and Swanky are sitting on the bed. And, you know, Swanky is talking to Annie about the ball. And he's talking to her about like Nadia and saying that he's like going to introduce them. And so the vibe that I get from Swanky is that Swanky is like, he knows who's hot. Like, but I mean, he's a stylist, so that actually makes a lot of sense. But either way, we also learned a little bit more about Annie now as well. So Annie has 2 daughters, 12 and 7. And, you know, the youngest daughter is 7. And we learned this about her daughters because Swanky is asking Annie about, you know, her family life, how everything is going. And, you know, that seems kind of like, chill on the surface, but then we find out that her youngest daughter, Olivia, has had to have surgeries on her bones since she was 3 years old, and she's 7 now. So she has had 6 surgeries. She has I think she has blunts. So without the surgeries, this is what Annie is telling us, the audience, she would be disabled. And I definitely was kind of curious to learn a little bit more about Blount's disease syndrome, or whatever it is. But nonetheless, that is what is happening with Annie's daughter and her home life. So I feel like that really helped to provide some context to what Annie had said in her opening introduction about the sacrifices she has made as a mother and a wife, because I couldn't even imagine 6 surgeries on my child starting at the age of 3 years old up into 7. That is crazy. So that really made me really feel for Annie. I'm not going to lie. And then, she just was she was telling Swanky how she misses her daughters and she wants to talk to them. So she actually goes outside of their hotel room, and it looks like on the balcony. But nonetheless, she goes outside to make a call to her daughters, and she's talking to Olivia. And Olivia asked her mom if she was happy where she was. So Annie's talking to Olivia on the phone, and her mom, she says, "Mommy, are you happy where you are?" And her mom says, "Yes." Why do you ask? "Yes, I'm happy." And Olivia said, little Olivia, 7-year-old little Olivia said, because she wanted to check if her mom was happy or she was just pretending. And that really broke my heart. And that really told me so many things. That told me that there is a lot more to learn about Annie and her life than I could ever imagine, because I don't know, this little girl must have been through so much in these last 4 years of her life that you can see the maturity and the growth in her to have to deal with situations that are so grown up, that she is so perceptive to pick up on her mother's moods, So that really touched my heart. And I immediately was drawn to Annie and her story. And it really helped me to understand what sacrifices she has made and what she was talking about, and why her career has had to be on hold, because she's taking care of her family. But especially when you have a child that is going through surgeries, I can't even imagine. So that was Annie and Swanky. So next, we get introduced to Kaylee and Naked DJ. Okay, so Kaylee is Naked DJ's Quentin. Okay, so she's Naked's girlfriend. And so Kaylee is a 28-year-old semi-pro footballer. And so she plays soccer. And then Quentin, Naked, is a DJ, and they are in an age gap interracial relationship. So Kaylee appears to be white, and Quentin is a Black South African, I'm assuming. So don't quote me, but they are in an interracial relationship, and they're in an age gap relationship. So there's 12 years between them, because Quentin is 40 and Kaylee's 28. And so when we're introduced to them, they're joking around a little bit, which was kind of cute. But we also start to see what the dynamic is of their relationship, and I guess what their storyline is going to be, because Kaylee makes some comments about Quentin not being romantic, and he seems to be a little bit awkward, and it's because she was in the pool. So she gets out of the pool and she gets onto this cabana with him, and so she's sitting there and she's like, "Oh, I'm cold," and he doesn't say anything. She was just like, "Aren't you gonna try and warm me up?" And he was just like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh my God, you're so not romantic." And I was just like, okay. I really didn't know what to think about that. Uh, I mean, I don't know. So, but we're introduced to them. So this is like the first couple we've been introduced to. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more. I really love the fact that Kaylee is an athlete, because I don't think we always really get that on these kind of reality shows. Like, you get the housewives, you get the like the philanthropists and the beauty care industry, like entrepreneurs, but not really so much the female athletes. So I thought that was kind of cool. So anyways, next scene now, this is when Swanky is introducing Nadia and Annie to each other. And so, first of all, Annie and Swanky is her stylist. So in this scene, they're both in these like coordinated black outfits. Annie is wearing like this tiered like tulle black dress. It was really cute, actually. They looked really nice. So it's definitely, I'm looking forward to the fashions. I'm definitely looking forward to the fashions in YFA. And so they go to lunch. So Swanky has set up this date for him to introduce Annie to Nadia so they can get acquainted. And so Annie and Nadia, like Nadia walks up. She's wearing a cute outfit. Like, she's wearing a tracksuit that was really cute. And she walks up, you know, she greets Swanky. And now, so I don't know if this is like a super nitpicky thing, but I did notice that when Nadia was walking up and she was getting ready to greet Swanky and Annie, Swanky was standing up and Annie was seated while Nadia went in for the hug. Now, I know it's not a big deal. But I found it a little interesting that Annie didn't get up ready to embrace Nadia. So I don't know. I thought that was a little interesting because I don't think it's a big deal at all, but it just kind of struck me as like Annie's initial reaction was to be closed off. So I don't know. Like, y'all let me know your thoughts. Maybe I might just be nitpicking, especially now that I've watched season 3, but nonetheless. So anyways, but they do seem to vibe. They seem to feel each other. But I will say this, like, when they cut to the confessional of Nadia and her impression of Annie, she feels like Annie is closed off. And this is before Nadia even said anything, like, in the confessional. I was just like, that energy was a little bit different. And then Nadia's read of Annie was that she felt like she's a little closed off. So I was just like, I don't know. So, next scene, we are introduced to Andile. All right, so I'm just go ahead and say right here, I'm biased to Andile because we're introduced to Andile. He is suave, he is handsome, and that's because he's coming over to Kaylee and Naked's house to like hang out with them, get to know them better as a couple. And Andile is giving sexy nerd. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You know, he's got the glasses. Like, for me, Andile is like one of those guys who is like unassuming. And I feel like that's what makes him so swaggy. Like, he just has this quiet confidence. Like, I could definitely see him being a problem. I could, because you wouldn't see it coming. So, yeah. So anyways, so Andile is, you know, he's seated with Naked and Kaylee by their pool. They're still sitting in that same cabana, Kaylee and Naked, and Andile is like seated across from them. So he's asking them about kids because Naked is already a father, and we find out that Kaylee doesn't have any children yet, but her and Naked do share a home together. And so anyway, Kaylee straight up says she doesn't know if she wants to get married or have kids, but that if she finds the right person, then maybe. So I was like, oh, okay. Now, Naked's reaction too was just like, do you hear this? Because to me, that kind of gave like, Kaylee, are you open to meeting someone else? Like, it gave Naked is as temporary as he wants to be. So it was giving shots fired. And don't get me wrong, like, I definitely feel that, and I'm a woman, okay, so I'm biased. I definitely feel that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket if you don't feel like the basket is solid. And I feel like maybe that's what it is, because I did find that to be an interesting thing for her to say to his friend, because Andile revealed, I believe, that he'd known Naked for like 10 years. So this is his close friend. So that was an interesting scene. But anyways, we move on to the next scene. And this next scene, we're back at Kaylee and Kaylee and Naked's house, and they're getting ready for Khanyi's ball. Okay, so it's the night of the ball, and so, Kaylee's getting ready, so Naked comes in, like, most men rushing her, like, when are you getting ready? She is, like, still trying to decide, like, what she's gonna wear, and Naked's kind of like, she's known about this for so long, but you know what? We can know about it for a long time and still be trying to decide, like, how we going to shut it down, okay? So it is what it is. And so anyways, we also get a little, because they're filming in their room now, and they're seated on their bed. And I do have to say, they have a beautiful home. The shots of their home from the outside, gorgeous. It is a beautiful house, and their closets, like, it is a very pretty home from what I can see of it so far. And so, so they're seated on the bed, and Naked is talking to Kaylee about, her wearing her football kits to bed. And Naked wanted her to, like, wear fishnets. And so that was kind of a cute little flirty scene. It was, I don't know. I didn't really make too much of it. Honestly, it was a filler scene for me, but it does still just kind of reveal a little bit more about their relationship as we are getting to know these people. So now we're at the ball. So it's the ball, it's Khanyi's ball. And so in terms of, like, the setting, we've got a red carpet, we've got the flashy car. So we've got, like, any luxury car you can imagine is pulling up, and the cast members that we have met so far are stepping out, okay? So your Benzes, your Porsches, your Range Rovers, like, and I'm not into cars, okay? So I'm not about to sit here and name all of the brands, but you get it. And then, they've got paparazzi, so people are snapping pictures. So Khanyi pulls up. She's in a beautiful red ball gown. Nadia pulls up. Then you have Diamond and his entourage. You have Kaylee and Naked walking up. Khanyi and Kudzi, let me not forget, she did come with her partner. You have Annie and Swanky walking up. And yeah, it just really looks like it's going to be an amazing night. They all look beautiful. Delay pulled up by himself. So we get inside, and they're all sitting at the table, and it looks like they're kind of, not everybody, but it looks like they're kind of meeting each other for the same time. For the first time. So sometimes when it comes to these shows, it's kind of curious, because it's just like, do y'all know each other? Because it was a lot of introductions, because, like, Annie seemed to be meeting Andile for the first time. Diamond was meeting Nadia for the first time, which made sense because Khanyi wanted to introduce them to each other. So yeah, there was a lot of introductions, which I guess that's natural, but nonetheless. So right off the bat, Swanky is throwing shade about the event. He said it was simple. It was the opposite of extravagant. And, like, Swanky, like, everything about him is fashion, okay? So I really wasn't surprised that he was kind of being a little shady. And same with Annie. Birds of a feather really do flock together, because she was just, like, kind of poo-pooing it in the confessional. So I was just like, okay, y'all are not impressed. So they sit down at the table, and I have to say, one thing that I kind of love about foreigners sometimes, especially because you're dealing with, like, language barriers sometimes, you cannot be as, like, cutesy sometimes in a language that's not yours. You just have to, like, you have to use the words that are at your disposal. So when Diamond meets Nadia, now granted, Diamond could just be a forward person, but he immediately tells her she's cute. Like, he is just like, you're cute. So I was like, well, okay, that's kind of cute, but I don't know. I feel like maybe diamonds from Tanzania. I hope I said that. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny because I was just like, okay, get straight to the point. And so Annie, she is checking out on Delay, not like that, but like I said, on Delay is handsome. He is very put together, and so she's like trying to find out more about him, where he's from, and he jokes that he's from Ethiopia, but he's not. But it turns out he's a sports presenter, and there's just a little chit chat at the table. So they're all seated at this table together with Khanyi, and Naked is questioning what Kudzi does professionally. I can't remember if this was in the confessional or if he did this at the table, which would have been messy, but nonetheless, you just have this table scene where everybody's kind of exchanging pleasantries. So once everybody is seated and the ball is now ready to begin, Khanyi gets up and she's making a speech. And so she is just making this speech about how, they're all young and rich and African, and that, everybody in the room is a baller. And she says something about how they all have bank accounts that are the same size. And, Annie wasn't feeling it. Now, mind you, I don't believe that Annie has met Khanyi before, so I think this is her first time meeting Khanyi, because Khanyi is Nadia's friend. And so anyway, she just felt like it was just in poor taste to be talking about money the way that Khanyi was. And I don't know. I can't really say that I agree or I disagree. I can't really say that I agree or disagree, because I think I understood the point that Khanyi was trying to make. So I think that, yes, regularly, I am not a fan of talking too much about what is in your bank account, because I do think it is in poor taste. But in this particular instance, I felt like the statement that Khanyi was trying to make, especially in this first episode of this show that has been greenlit on Netflix about, young famous Africans, especially against the backdrop of some of the stereotypes about African countries, I felt like it fit. Like, it made sense to discuss the wealth that exists and has always existed in Africa. So I think it made sense, but Annie was not feeling it. So that was the second complaint that Annie had of plenty, okay? Because when her steak came, she was not happy. She didn't want to eat it. She felt like it was undercooked. It was uncooked. And then Nadia joked that she should wash it down with some champagne. And Annie said the champagne is flat. Not the champagne is flat, Annie. I was like, Annie, oh my God. Now, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I was kind of just like, Annie, for you to be talking, for you to be criticizing Khanyi for being crass and boasting about money, I was just like, you really have some cheek, because you are talking. Khanyi is seated right there. So this is the host of this event. She is the person who has shelled out the dollars to put this event together. Well, not dollars, but you know what I mean. She has shelled out the money to put this event together, and she's graciously invited you or accepted you to her event, and you are complaining about everything. Now, granted, what you did in the confessional was in the confessional, but you are outright loudly complaining about flat champagne and an undercooked steak. I don't know. I was just like, okay, Annie, you had me. You was pulling on my heartstrings. You as a mom, as a wife, I was definitely feeling you, but that particular thing that she was doing, I just had me side-eyeing Annie, because I was just like not you criticizing Khanyi for you kind of acting the same way, but I was like, all right. And Nadia was not pleased. So, because it looks like Annie she felt like Annie was her guest. Annie and Swanky are her guests because she's friends with Khanyi. And so this is, to me, where I see the beginnings of the friction between between Nadia and Annie, because I could see how that would leave a bad taste in Nadia's mouth. And granted, I told you about the interaction when they first met each other. And look, I know that first impressions are not always everything. I will stand by that. But at the same time, I think they do say a lot. And the energy can be felt. So now everybody is eating, everybody is drinking, well, everybody except Annie. And they're talking about their love lives. And so Khanyi is asking Nadia about her boyfriend. And I think she was like trying to create something between Diamond and Nadia. Now, I'm still confused by Khanyi knowing that Nadia has a boyfriend. And Nadia has said this is her boyfriend, but then she's actively trying to pair her up with Diamond. And then you cut to the confessional with Diamond, and Diamond wants to see if he can play with Nadia. That does not sound promising. So I'm just real confused. Like, I'm confused about, like, what is it that Kanye is trying to achieve. It's just mess. All right. So Diamond's talking about his love life, specifically as it pertains to his children. So now we get a little bit more information about this 4, 5, 6 kids thing. So it turns out that Diamond's mom told him that there's a lady that might have his child, but she's married and her husband thinks that the kid is his. So she doesn't want to say or find out if the child is really Diamond's. And then he has another woman. So that was 5. So the four are set. So that was number 5. And this 6th child is apparently a child that might be 10 years old. And it's from 10 years ago when he had a one-night stand with a woman in the beginning of his career when he was just starting, and he's trying to find her. So, I admire that about him, wanting to kind of find out, if this child belongs to him or not. But I was like, okay. I mean, it's still a little messy, but okay. All right, let me drink some water. Whew. All right. So then Annie asked Khanyi if she has any kids. And we find out that Khanyi has a 15-year-old daughter. And so they show a picture of her daughter. So cute. But we also find out that Khanyi is a very liberal mother/parent, which is interesting because, traditionally Africans are conservative. Just in my experience, I cannot speak for everybody. So I think that some of the things that Kanye was saying was very triggering, especially for Annie, who has a lot of opinions as well. Because Annie wasn't feeling it when she found out, and neither was Andile, because Andile wasn't feeling it because Kanye said that, I think she had her daughter when she was 20, because she's 35 now. And so her daughter is 15. And so she was saying that she is the mom to her daughter that she wanted when she was 15. And we find out that Kanye's daughter, her 15-year-old daughter, lives alone and has her own apartment. And so I just feel like there's a lot going on at this table, because Andile is questioning why Khanyi would parent her child the way she is, and talking about how there are younger girls, children looking up to them, I guess. Maybe, I think he's talking in the context of the show, and so how they can get the wrong idea. And Annie is really criticizing Khanyi as well. And it's awkward. There's a lot going on at this table. Nadia is irritated. I think she said it in her confessional that she was like, this is exactly what she was concerned about. And look, I respect the fact, I always respect when people are real about how they feel, but I also feel like there's a time and a place. So I feel like if I invite you to my event and you find out that I let my 15-year-old daughter live in her own apartment, I really think that this is not the time for you to call me up on that. I don't know. So, because it just felt like Annie was kind of going after Khanyi about her mothering skills, and I was just like, I just don't know how you think that is going to fare. But okay. But since Annie and Andile seem to have the same criticisms of Khanyi, they actually go off somewhere to connect a little bit further, get to know each other a little bit better. And so I told you that Andile is a sports presenter. Annie is an actress. Andile is actually familiar with Annie's husband, Two-Face. And so, you know, he was asking Annie, like, you know, when we talk about, because Two-Face has this famous song, African Queen. And so he was just like, so you're the African Queen, which was really cute because Annie, like, she had her African continent chain on, and, you know, she got really excited. But just wait, because then we start to learn a little bit more about Annie and also her relationship with Two-Face. And so we find out that Annie met him when she was 16. So she's been with him since then. And apparently, once he became a star overnight, like, she basically said that she fell in love with this boy who became a superstar overnight. And that's when all the trouble started. Because we find out that he's cheated. And we find out he's cheated because Khanyi has now come along. And so she sees Andile and Annie sitting down together. And she's like, well, look, I mean, this is my party. I can go anywhere I want. So she literally sits right in between them. And she's just like, all right, so put me on. Like, tell me what's up. And so Andile is telling Khanyi about how, you know, he's learning about Annie and her marriage to Two-Face. And how, you know, they've had their ups and downs. Okay. And so then Khanyi says it straight. Cheating? Ups and downs cheating? Yeah? And that is when Annie lets us all know the tea, okay? That he has had 4 children on her. And that, I think that's how I interpreted it. Because she said her first child is his 5th. And she made it clear to us that she knew him first. Okay, so she's had his 5th child, even though she was there from the beginning of his career. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not judging Annie because this is not about judging Annie, but there was the pain I felt for Annie when she was describing the embarrassment and the humiliation that Two-Face has put her through. And then she is like tearing up about it. And she is just talking about how much pain that this has caused her. And she says that it's all pain and hurt. Annie. And then on top of that, Annie just says, but there are more good times than bad, and they have forever to make more good times to make up for the bad. I mean, Annie, you know, that is an optimistic way to look at it, but girl, you seem hurt. Whoa, like, in my notes, I literally just put Jesus, period, after that whole. And, you know, Khanyi, she says something that I thought was really perceptive, because she said now she understands why Annie is so shady and closed off. And I think it explains a lot as well. Now, she also says that Annie gave her all the tools and information she needed to know about her, to use against her. Now, in my notes, I put Khanyi is crazy. But I actually am really glad that we did see that reaction from Khanyi, because number one, against the backdrop of Annie throwing so much shade and then going after Khanyi, who is the host of this event, to then now also spill all her tea to this woman, I really think that this is a good lesson in self-awareness, because I think that sometimes people don't really realize what they're doing, whether it is not being humble enough, or also just like you cannot give people the tools to your own destruction, especially when you don't know if they're a friend or a foe. And it looks like you have put them in a position to be your foe. So I was like, Annie. I mean, Khanyi is crazy, but anyways. So now the show is like coming to a close. And so now the ball is like proceeding and people are drinking. And now Khanyi introduces Diamond Platnumz. And so, he's a big recording artist. So he's now going to perform. And he was wearing a really cool suit. It was like holographic, and it was like leopard print, but holographic leopard spots. I don't know if that's a weird way to describe it, but I thought it was nice. And so he's on the mic, and he proceeds to dedicate his song to a single Nadia who is not single, which I just was like, oh my God, like what is happening? Nadia, you have a boyfriend? And so that was interesting, because he's dedicating the song to her. So Nadia is definitely like, what is going on? Like, why are you dedicating a song to me? Like, don't let my man see this. But let me tell you something. So earlier in the show, when Diamond is introduced to Nadia, and he asked her if she has a boyfriend. She says she does have a boyfriend, but they're long distance. And so he says, I like the second part of that sentence, right? And in his confessional, he says, because if a woman tells you the second part of that sentence, he basically says that he's in. And what would you know? Nadia is interested. Because she apparently was very flattered by the song that he dedicated to her, because then she proceeds to now want to get to know Diamond more. And then we find out that she is keeping her options open. I was like, oh my God, okay, this is just the first episode, and it's just mess, okay? It is mess between Annie and her marriage, which, okay. And then Nadia and Khanyi, and it was a lot. Like, it was a lot. And, like, I don't even think we have met everybody yet. So, I'm ready for episode 2, basically. I'm ready to get into the rest of the season and see how Nadia and Annie's relationship continues to evolve. I'm curious to learn see how this plays out with Nadia and Diamond, and see what other antics Khanyi is up to. But yeah, so far it's really good. I really enjoyed the first episode, and I will be back with a recap for episode 2.